Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the Gilbertson Aero Factory. Today is Sunday, the 13th of August, 2023. No building happened yesterday. It was our monthly EAA meeting followed by a fly out to lunch. It was fun and also really, 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 really hot, especially trying to navigate around the Houston Class Bravo airspace. That meant flying no higher than 1,800 feet all the way down to LBX, Brazoria County, whatever. I think they keep changing the name of that airport. Nonetheless, when I got back, I was overheated and wasn't about to get anything done here in the late afternoon. So here we are today. The leading edges of both wings are ready to be riveted, and it is nice and cool in the shop, and it's probably going to stay that way for the rest of the day. So we'll get that done. There is an update from Vans on the laser cut parts debacle. They're continuing to test. They finished one phase of testing, moving on to a second phase of testing. Their results so far, as they indicate, and I'll put a link to their page in the description below, is that they haven't, to this point, been able to create any test results that would indicate that there's going to be a significant impact on the longevity of affected parts. But a second phase of testing that's going to take quite a while to do. So that's that. The other important news in there, and is something that a lot of us were curious about, is related to the potential disassembly of parts that have already been built. We want to know, if I take apart my horizontal stabilizer, for example, and I damage other parts in the process, what is Vans going to do about that? And according to what they wrote yesterday, obviously affected parts will be replaced at no cost. The adjacent parts that need to be replaced, if they're damaged in the process of disassembly, will be offered at, I think, what they call a significantly discounted rate. So who knows what that is exactly, but at least we have some kind of information on that, and we'll see where we go from there. I still haven't inspected my empennage kit yet, so I don't know yet if I have any any cracked dimples. That's really what it's all about. Do you have cracked dimples or not? It's not about whether or not you have laser cut parts. They're not bad in and of themselves, but some of them had such horribly bad holes that when they were dimpled, they would crack. So anyways, that's it for that. Let's just fire up the GoPro and get into riveting these wing skins, or rather these leading edges. And we're going to have a permanently shaped front end of an airfoil when that's done. So thanks for being here. Give me a like if you want to. Give me a subscribe if you find this valuable. Turn on the notifications if you want to find out when I post a new video. It's basically every build a day, a new video comes up. So thanks for being here. Let's build an airplane.
So here we are, episode 91. This is part 5 of the leading edges build. This work session was just about 5 hours on the nose, maybe a little bit over. I've decided for these longer work sessions, I'm not going to speed this up any faster than 20 times. It gives me a little more time to yap about what's going on, and you can kind of see what's going on. When I've gone faster than that, it's a little bit ridiculous. The leading edges are pretty uncomplicated parts. It's very straightforward work. It just takes a little bit of time. This is the 5th session to get them all done. And basically picking up where we left off yesterday, if you recall, all of the aftmost rivets that attach the rib flanges to the skin were squeezed. And now we're bucking all of the rest. It doesn't say to do so in the instructions. It doesn't really give any guidance, but I'm basically just starting with the middle ribs and then working my way out. This turned out to be pretty clean work, to be honest. I'm feeling, at least for this kind of work, pretty confident bucking rivets, which is nice. It is just sort of time-consuming work, but yeah. I think that this first leading edge that I did here took about 2 hours and 30 minutes to complete, and I took a little lunch break, and the second one was like 2:20 maybe. No real big hang-ups or surprises in doing this. I think there were a total of two rivets, I think, that I drilled out. One of them was just cosmetic, maybe, but I just didn't like it because the rest of these were sitting so nice and flush, and this one just had a little, whatever. I got rid of it. And then the second one was just one that I had overdriven, and so it had a bad shop head and had to get rid of it. Other than that, not that bad. It did stay pretty cool in the shop today in relative terms. I don't think that it got above 83 in the workshop, and it's currently 104 outside, so I'll take it. That's certainly workable for me. I gotta say, man, this is just so much more light in the shop. Through most of the spring and the early part of the summer, I was always working with the garage doors open and working closer to the doors. So I had a lot of light, but when it gets cold, and it will, thank God, eventually get cold, I'll be happy to have all this light in here when I once again will be required to work with the doors closed. Any other notes on this? Okay, so you probably noticed these weird gray bars kind of scrolling, sort of like shadows scrolling from the bottom to the top of the screen. I don't know what to do about that. I think it's just sort of a weird combination of what is the home electrical 60 hertz. So all those lights are turning on and off 60 times per second, and then the camera is shooting 23.976 frames per second, and then we're speeding it up by a factor of 2,000. There's a lot of weird math in there, and that's probably what the result is. But you may notice that the image is a little bit better because I had been shooting up to this point everything in 1080 HD simply because I just thought that going up to 4K would be either too much for my computer or would just slow things down so much. But my editing process is pretty simple. Other than speeding things up and doing a little bit of color correction, I don't add much to these clips. Therefore, it turns out that my computer, which, like many people, I built it during the pandemic by standing in line at Micro Center, it seems to have no problem with this 4K business, and that's why the last 2 or 3 videos, the GoPro footage has just looked a little bit more crisp and clear. It's 4K, and we'll stick with that. I'm pretty happy with it. Notes on the riveting. The leading edges are a little bit, not a lot, but they're a little bit bigger than the fuel tanks. They're a little bit longer or wider, whatever you want to say. From inboard to outboard, they stretch a little bit further than the fuel tanks do. They're considerably lighter when you pick them up. They're just much less beefy. The skin here, I don't know exactly. I think the fuel tank skin is like 32 thousandths, and this is maybe 20 thousandths. It's a much lighter skin, and then the ribs themselves are much lighter. They're thinner material, and they have big lightning holes in it. One of the things that I was concerned about, and most builders of these kits should be concerned about, is getting weird notches around the very nose of the leading edge. The ribs have this flange that is sort of separated and broken as it makes the turn around the very nose. And if you're not very deliberate about filing in between those notches can present themselves once you get this thing all closed up. So it's something that I paid attention to during Rib Prep Hell Week, and I thought that I had done a good job, but you don't know until you put it all together. I didn't see any evidence of those of any harsh ridges sort of protruding and showing themselves when this was all clecoed together, so I felt pretty good about it. And so, yeah, it looks pretty clean. The dimples are I am really impressed with how cleanly this all goes together. Those Cleveland dimple dies are pretty impressive. There were, I mean, between these two, the two leading edges combined, it's like what did I come up with? 372 rivets. And of the 372 rivets, I said that I drilled out 2 and replaced them. I didn't have any problems with runaway rivet guns skittering across the skin, any weird deformities. There are a couple of little, you really got to look for them in the light to find a couple, little depressions. So I'm pretty happy with it. One thing that you probably can't tell looking at this is that I used, if you watched my tools video, I showed you that I had 2 different flush rivet sets. I had the one that came with the Cleveland kit, and then there was another one that I bought from Brown Aviation Tool, I think. And it sort of it's a little bit wider face on it, and then it has like a rubber foot that goes around the outside of that mushroom head. I'll pull up a picture and throw it up here since I'm talking about it. Anyways, I hadn't used that one very much because the spring that I have, the retention spring that I have is a little bit, it's not ideal for that. It's a little bit, the shank on it's a little bit bigger. I decided at the beginning of this, just like on the first couple, 1 or 2 rivets maybe, to try it out and see what I thought. It turns out I really like it. It does work really well. And I can't say this for sure, but it seems like it's a little bit more forgiving in the event that you do have kind of a runaway trigger and the gun starts to run across the skin. I think that there was one time in this session when I kind of jerked the trigger, like the trigger was sticky, and doing that long reach where you're reaching all the way. That's a tough reach. It doesn't really read very well in the camera, but trying to get the very first rivet, especially on the top side of the skin where the curve is most pronounced, reaching into the leading edge, holding the bucking bar and then holding the rivet gun. It's a pretty tricky reach, especially trying to make sure that rivet gun is sitting perpendicular to a constantly curving surface. Anyways, the point is this. There was at one point where the gun did skip across the skin and it didn't leave a single mark. And I feel like it's because of that rubber foot. I thought the idea behind that little rubber ring that sits around it was just to hold it maybe a little bit more secure against the skin, but it is kind of like a rubber baby buggy bumper. The one time that the gun did kind of skip across the skin, it just didn't. I think that the rubber took all of the impact and none of that translated into the skin. So these turned out really clean, and obviously I'm super happy about that. So I say that the leading edges are done, and they are in fact done, but they can't go on the plane yet. Right behind me there are the 2 main spars, and as you're looking at on the screen, the left end of the spars, those would be the outboard portions, and all of those little 3/32 holes need to be countersunk, every one of them, and it's a lot. So that will be the next bit of business that I get into. I am leaving town for a few days this week. I'm not sure if I'm going to get anything done on the build tomorrow, which is Monday. I might have to keep myself occupied with other kind of more important tasks before I head out of town. But I'm only going to be gone for 3 days, so I will be getting back into the workshop before the end of the week. What else did I want to talk about here with this riveting business? Okay. In front of right under my nose right there, well, now you can't see it because I moved it, but there's a little hole there for the tie-down attachment. And when I was visiting Joe, my tech advisor, the other day, somehow the topic of those came up. And what he told me was, don't go cheap on the tie downs, but pay the money for the ones that they offer, I think either Vans or Aircraft Spruce. And the reason is those eyelets that you get for when you buy like the $30 or whatever they are, tie down rings, they're welded. So they're a completely closed loop. And he said that the ones that you get from the hardware store, which are like $2-3, sturdy as hell, stainless steel. However, the loop isn't closed. It's not a welded loop. And if you have your airplane tied down to the ramp somewhere and there's a good enough wind, it will open up that loop, and that would be bad. So that's good to know. So to that point, if you are a person who wants to leave those attached, you're going to need to use a jam nut, and the hole that you're instructed to drill to put in your tie down is not going to be big enough. You need to widen that hole so that the jam nut can fit in there as well. And one other thing, I may have talked about this before, but it's been quite a while. When originally fitting the skins and drilling the holes for the tie downs, because they're not in the plane already, but there is a hole that's pre-punched there, and this is, I guess, the important part. The instructions have you, when you fit the main skins, measure an angle. So when you build the tie down attach assembly, and you attach it to the main spar, you put the main skin, which hangs down. As you're looking at it right here, the main skin would hang down below, drape down below it. Then you kind of pick a point and you draw a line that would go from some point on that main skin through the middle of the hole for the tie down attach, like where you're going to screw in the tie down. You do 2 of those. You're sort of triangulating so that once you put the leading edge skin on, you can extend those lines on the leading edge skin and find the mark where it crosses and drill a hole there to line up with the tie down hole. Look, don't do it. Don't bother with the lines. These days, a pre-punch kit, I'm telling you, the hole that was already there is perfect. I did the measuring thing. I drew the lines, and I said, it looks like my marks are a 1/16 of an inch different from the ones that Vans had. And then once I drilled through, I realized their measurements are better than mine. So anyways, leading edges are done. 91 is done. Here's a little beauty shot of how they turned out. I'm pretty happy with it. Try to get most of the fingerprints and stuff wiped off with a little bit of acetone, but we'll see you on the next one sometime later this week. Be good people. I'll see you on the other side.